We'll study 2nd John today. We finished 1st John last few weeks. Now we're going to do 2nd John today and hopefully 3rd John the following Sunday, and we're done with John. We're going to go somewhere else, okay? But if you have read 2nd John, a lot of it are repetitions of what was taught in 1st John. Now, of course, what is first written? 1st or 2nd John? Of course, 1st, right? It's got to be 1st John. So that means a couple of years later, when John wrote this letter, it's basically a reminder, meaning they forgot again. The people of God, people has this amazing talent of forgetting. You look at the people of Israel in the Old Testament, the same thing. They forget the goodness of the Lord, and they will backslide, and then they will return the next generation, and then they will forget again. In fact, there's a lot of instances in Kings and Chronicles that the same king will experience the goodness of God, will be blessed, will be healed, and then backslide. And then at the end of his life, repent. It's, I don't know if you can call it a curse, but Peter said, while I am in this tent or in this tabernacle, I will continue to remind you. You are only going to be reminded of something that you already mind, okay, or you already know, you already thought of. So you can't be reminded of something that you do not know. So when Peter said that, I'm here to remind you as often as I could, that means the things he was sharing in his letter, people already know. So a lot of what is in 2nd John is actually in 1st John. So we're still working on the theme of the assurance of our salvation. This the news that I read yesterday. Remember years ago before COVID, when finally people decided, when some of you decide you will no longer greet Merry Christmas but Happy Holidays. Remember those days? Salvation Army in UK decided, they say they will remove Christ, basically the decorations in their stores. And of course, America is already doing that. This was, I think, during the time of Obama. Well, yesterday's news, Brighton, I don't know if it's Brighton College or Brighton University in England, 20,000 students. The school banned the use of anything that is Christian in terms of Christmas. So again, they say, well, I don't know. They don't like the word Christmas because it has Christ in it, you know. But of course, they will not forbid you in greeting Happy Ramadan. You know, can you imagine changing that also and greeting them Happy Holidays? What we have been discussing, the spirit of the Antichrist, these things that they are doing right now, they are all anti-Christian and basically anti-Semitic. That is what is going on globally. And you know, for the brothers and sisters, be very conscious about that. You can tell me that that is what you get in the stores, but when you send cards, for goodness sake, don't send Happy Holidays, okay? Get something that says Merry Christmas or something like that, because we're actually cooperating with these people who are. This is using the government. This is using whatever they have to enforce their agenda. They're not doing this in against other religions. Okay, it's only against Christianity. And we know that in the book of Revelation, the day will come when these celebrations will be over. Okay, that's biblically speaking. And so when the two witnesses are killed or murdered in the streets of Jerusalem, the Antichrist will give an order, do not bury them. Now that's very unusual because for the Jews, the moment somebody dies, you bury them right away because the body is unclean, it's dead, you cannot touch the body of a carcass. So it's unclean. So they will bury it right away. Same day, a couple of hours later, they'll bury it. But the Antichrist will say, well, leave the corpse on the street for 3 days. Of course, on the third day, it will come back to life. That is the time when the Bible says the world will rejoice and begin to give gifts to one another. That's among theologians, we call this Merry Anti-Christmas. Happy Anti-Christmas celebration. That is how it is going on now. Since the Obama administration, we know that they discourage Merry Christmas. And a lot of Christians complied. A lot of you complied. Well, the reason why I know is because I received holiday cards from you guys. And it says Happy Holidays, Of course, you may say that is the only cards available. No, it's not. There are still cards that says Merry Christmas. But this is what I'm saying. Even the Christians become very compliant over these things. What is going on globally is very anti-Christian and very, very anti-Semitic. And people are trying not to notice it, but that is just what is going on, and we have been discussing that quite a bit. And the Bible tells us that will continue. And so, by the way, even in the Philippines, the moment there is a BER at the end of the month, they say they start celebrating Christmas. Not really. Even in the Philippines, it has died down a lot. Not a bit, but a lot. And so this is happening everywhere else. And again, what concerns me is Christians are very compliant over these things. Please be very conscious about these things. Don't be compliant over this nonsense. Okay, stand for what you believe. Be a Christian, for goodness' sake. You gave your life to Jesus. Let it stay in His hands. Amen. Some of you have already bought your cards. Just repent. Okay. 2 John. Let's read that. 2 John. The elder. Well, there's only one chapter. It's one of the shortest books in the New Testament. The elder. To the elect lady and her children, which I love in the truth. And not only I, but also all who know the truth. Because of the truth that remains in us, and that will be with us forever. Grace, mercy, and peace be with us from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father, in truth and love. I was very glad to find some of your children walking in truth, in keeping with a command we have received from the Father. So now I ask you, dear lady, not as if I were writing you a new command, but one we have had from the beginning, that we love one another. Again, it's a reminder. This is love, that we walk according to His commands. This is the command, as you have heard it from the beginning, that you walk in love. Many deceivers have gone out into the world. They do not confess the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Watch yourselves so that you don't lose what we have worked for. Some translations, what you have worked for. That means so that you don't lose what we have worked for. That means we can lose what we have worked for, okay? But that you may receive a full reward. Anyone who does not remain in Christ's teaching, but goes beyond it and does not have God. The one who remains in that teaching, again, not going beyond. The one who remains in that teaching, this one has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your home and do not greet him. For the one who greets him shares in his evil works. Now that's a very tough statement to make, considering this is a very small letter. Though I have many things to write to you, I don't want to use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to come to you and talk face to face, so that our joy may be complete. Last verse, the children of your elect sister send you greetings. Now, in 1 John, it talks about so many things, so it is just a continuation. The elect lady here is actually a metaphor for the church, or children for the membership. Okay? That's not really a specific lady. Can you imagine sending a letter to the elect lady? Who is that? There has to be a proper name. So, because this is a letter, it's addressed to a church, and they are called elect lady. Because in the Bible, the community of faith has been addressed as a woman, or as a mother, as a virgin daughter, all of those things. So, a bride of Christ. And so this is a metaphor for the church. Okay, so in 1 John again, there are so many things that were discussed. But the main thing in 1 John, aside from the spirit of the Antichrist, is actually Shiism, or division in the church. Because there are some people who are teaching wrong doctrines. They say that Jesus did not come in the flesh. Or some people are saying Jesus did not come back to life. And so that is being challenged by the author. And so now John revisits that. And so now let's talk about what happens now if a person knows the truth and walks away from the truth with full knowledge. Now, some people are deceived. Some people are led astray. Now, that's different, okay, because that's a process. But there are different languages in the Bible. For example, in the book of Hebrews, it talks about the ship being anchored lest you drift away. That's a slow drift, because you guys have been to the docks. You know that the waves are normally not strong on a normal day. So they will still tie the ship on something. But if you don't tie it up, you know that it doesn't go away right away. It's a slow drift. And so there will be a conditioning. Something that you don't agree with today will not be presented to you and say, that's totally wrong. It will be taken little by little by little, a slow drift. And then one day you wake up, and lo and behold, you're totally far away. It's like any normal thing in our health. You feel something, you say, no, it's nothing. You feel a little bit more, and it's nothing, until one day you wake up and you go to the doctor. It's a 40 stage of cancer. And there are a few cases that we've read like that because you ignore the signs. And Christians are very good at ignoring the signs. Signs basically of the Antichrist, signs of the world, the church becoming very worldly. And I think if we will just be very conscious, last few years, that has been taking place right in front of us. You know, when anti-Christian slogans were being put out there, we really don't complain because we are people of love and we are people of tolerance. Well, they kept going at it. They kept going at it. They kept going at it. Until, of course, when the President of the U.S. began to encourage happy holidays. Again, it just kept going, you know, and it just kept going. Until we wake up one day, prayer was taken away. Not as a law, but as a practice. It was taken away. And we just keep smiling. We just keep saying, oh, we are people of love. We are this, we are that. And then in some countries, we heard about our brothers and sisters being persecuted in the faith. For example, in America, we welcome all kinds of faith. If you are a Muslim, you can come here and propagate your faith. In Muslim countries, you cannot go there and propagate Christianity. It's unequal trading, you know. So, oh, we allow that. Well, because we are safe and secure here. So this little by little drifting away, until COVID came. And when COVID came, we know that we are no longer just drifting away. We are far, far away from the shore. Why? Because the church barely complained. There's almost no resistance. We just believe now everything, whatever the government says. But even that, we are actually very subjective. For example, we were praying about God giving wisdom to those doctors that are trying to come up with vaccines. By the way, I'm saying that I'm fully vaccinated with all the boosters necessary, you know, because I believe in taking care of my health. Well, so Christians are praying, but even that, some Christians begin to say, we will not follow that. So Christians, we know that we can disobey what we want to disobey. So can you imagine when it comes to vaccination, some Christians, especially in the Philippines, go as far as saying it's of the Antichrist, and there is no basis for that. However, we don't complain when little by little, Merry Christmas is taken away from us, prayer is taken away. I mean, a lot of Christians are beginning to be pro-abortion and pro-LGBTQ. Everything is just being taken away, and we're just quiet. Why? Because we are people of love. So now John addressed that. Okay? John addressed that very issue. So, in terms of loving our brothers in relation with those or to those who causes schism among us or division, there are different answers that we can find about this question. Same thing today. What do you do when somebody is already very destructive or alienating you from the faith? Filipinos have a word for that. We will say, pasensya ka na. You know? Literally, it's translated, be patient. But actually, be patient is not the right translation. Okay? It sounds the same, but when a Filipino say, pasensya ka na, it doesn't really mean be patient. Okay? What that means is, can you just tolerate it? That's actually the most literal rendering. Just tolerate it. I know it's bad, but just tolerate. That's your brother. That's your sister. That's your nephew. That's the first cousin of your first dog. You know. So just tolerate it. I mean, all of these things. I was watching a documentary on Floyd Mayweather. Yeah. Was it Floyd Mayweather? Oh, no, it's somebody else. It's another boxer. He separated, his dad was his trainer. But what breaks the relationship is he owns a dog. I don't know what dog is that, a pit bull or something. And the dog bit his sister, the daughter of his father. And so the father was very upset, pulled his gun and shoot the dog because he went after the sister. You know, if you are a father, well, maybe not for all. You know, maybe you will kiss your dog after it beats your sister, but this father was so upset, so he pulled the gun and shoot the dog. The boxer decided to severe relationship with his father because he shot his dog. Now, you look at that, you say, well, there is no tolerance there. Okay, that's your dad. That's the one who taught you boxing. That's the one who cultivated your trade. And now because your dog beat the sister, by the way, it's happening right now, you know, in some circles. So the relationship was severed and no toleration. Now, among Christians, when something very destructive to the faith happens, this is one of the ways by which Christians react. Tolerance and charity. We say, let's just keep tolerating it, let's just keep tolerating it, and let's keep tolerating it to the break point. And even if it breaks, we just keep tolerating it. Now, this is a problem, and I've noticed that regarding my children as they're growing up, and I know that they're still growing, and that includes Joseph. If you keep tolerating, what happened is the black becomes gray to the point that you don't know the distinction anymore. But that is actually one of the solutions, because there are certain things, there are certain conflicts you have to tolerate. Like for example, you have Russia attacking Ukraine. I mean, for goodness sake, the world has to be a little bit more tolerant. Why? Because if you don't become tolerant, experience tolerance for Russia, what are you going to do? Declare a war against Russia? We are now in a nuclear age. What are you going to do? Explode all the bombs? So there's a lot of thinking that needs to take place. But in the times of John, so here are these people that are very disruptive to the faith, the practice of the faith. And what are we going to do with that? So a certain group decided we'll just tolerate and exercise love. Well, they become more abusive. Now, the second solution is this: guard the truth and preserve the purity of the church. So on one end, tolerance and charity. On the other end, just guard the truth and preserve the purity of the church. This becomes problematic because the Pharisees are like that, the Sadducees are like that. So in their desire to say, let's preserve the truth, well, they end up not restoring those who wants to be restored, because that's just the way it is. Remember in the Civil War, there's a lot of Americans who died, but then later on we find out more people died out of infection than actually during the war, because the absence of knowledge, somebody will have infection in the foot and the doctor will say, cut the legs. And we'll just cut the legs, even if it can be saved. Right now, a lot of those things can be saved, but in those days can't be saved. It's because of infection. The knowledge in medicine was very poor. And so it has to be very dramatic. Look at the spread of COVID. There's almost zero tolerance in a lot of governments. Just lockdown. Even China, just lockdown. Lately, they have all this uproar going on, so they ease up on the lockdown. So you begin to wonder, why did the government impose that, and when the people complain, no more lockdown? So you begin to wonder, is it based on science or based on political agenda? But one of these two, you begin to wonder, what position will I take? That is what is happening in the church that John was writing. So those two answers, tolerance and charity, and then guard the truth and preserve the purity of the church, were their choices. We need to find out now what John says about it. Now, John, at the first reading, seems to choose the second option, which is guard the truth and preserve the purity of the church. Because he says in verse 10, if anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, that is his teaching, do not receive him into your home and do not greet him. Now remember, do not receive him into your home is very, very strong word, because when you travel in those days, there are no cars, very, very few hotels. There are inns, and they are very small. So normally a home will entertain you. But you don't visit a home and say, hey, let's have lunch. And then after lunch, go home. No, he may stay with you for 3 days. He may stay with you for 1 week. And some stay for 3 months. Remember when Ezra asked the king, Artaxerxes, let me have a trip in Jerusalem to find out what's going on. Because he was very sad. And the king and the queen asked him, so how long? He told them how long. Now, that happened on the 20th year of Artaxerxes, 20th year. Who is this guy? Nehemiah decided to return on the 32nd year. The short vacation is 12 years. Yeah. Now, in this case, in the New Testament, when a friend visits you, it's not 1 hour, 2 hours. When they eat, it's not 1 hour either. It's a table fellowship. And so, there's Bible study, there's a fellowship, there's a discussion of the Torah and all of those things. Now, John said, if the person is, in the context of John, has been warned, had been taught, and refused to listen, when they come to you, you don't even entertain them. You do not receive him into your home. You don't break bread with them. You don't greet them. That's a very strong position that John took. And I reckon most of us will not agree with it. But that is what we read that John said. Okay? Now, let's go back again, the historical context of this statement from John. Because if you don't have the historical context of verse 10, then that is really a very strong decision. Number one, 2 John is one of the shortest writings in the New Testament. In fact, he said, I have a lot more to say. But he said this, I prefer not to say it, not to write. I prefer that when I come to you. You know, some emergencies, some problems, you cannot write about. You have to do it personally. And John, he was already old during this time, said, I'm going to go there. And we will see more of that in 3 John. So it's one of the shortest writing in the New Testament. I hope when, we're doing 2 John today, I hope you read it through in 2 minutes, If it takes you 1 day to read that, then that is your problem. Because that's a very short book. And so, very practical language was used. The purpose of this letter is to deal with the problem of traveling ministers whose teachings disagree with what John or with what the gospel said. Traveling, a lot of people wants to become traveling ministers. Traveling ministry is actually a big problem even today. A lot of irresponsible teachings happens through traveling ministry. Okay? I mean, because traveling ministers have one fundamental need. That is support. And when you are in a traveling ministry, what happens is you are dependent on the offerings and the gifts that is being given in churches. That's why a lot of these evangelists, evangelists are no longer popular today. Now, it's still happening in Africa. Of course, because of COVID, they also stopped. But these are very difficult ministries because then you go to a base. That's why most of them are part of a denomination. You go to a base, you write tons of letters, thousands of letters. You write that, you solicit help. Thank God for technology. Now you can just simply send an email, but you are looking for partners. For example, 700 Club, CBN. The reason why it's called 700 Club is because Pat Robertson needs 700 partners to give, I forgot, something like $70 or $7. I think $7 to begin with. $7, 700 partners, then he can sustain his small television ministry. That's why it's called 700 Club. You have to become part of his board, even today, a board of CBN. To become part of his board, you have to be rich. Because I think in his days, an average board member donates at least $20,000 per year. Now that is when they were beginning. And then it became $200,000 per year to become part of his board. You see, because that is based on the gifts. Now, of course, his finances are no longer the same as before because he was able to establish a lot of businesses. That's why a lot of traveling ministries in the late 80s, they began to establish their own churches. You are looking at people like Jimmy Swaggart. Before he fell, he established a big church. And right now, of course, Copeland has his church, Eagle Mountain. You have Jesse Duplantis has his own church. Jerry Sabella has his own church. A lot of these people begin to have their own church. So they will have a base of support. Because when you don't have money, you cannot sustain that. And so, these traveling ministers in those days, that is their problem. So what do? They cater. They cater to the need of the congregation. Say, for example, say in this church, say DJ is disgruntled, okay? And a traveling minister came. So traveling minister preached and was very loving. Of course, they will have to be loving. They don't stay with us. So they will show their best face in all of those things. And so, right after the service or during the fellowship time, she decided to come to the traveling minister and say, I have a problem. What do you think about this? What do you think will the traveling minister do? Agree with you. Why? Because he needs your money. I understand what you're saying. This is my advice to you. And so, members of the church normally find it very appealing to talk to traveling ministers because the traveling ministers don't stay and they just want the money. If they don't have the support, they'll have nothing. And so the traveling ministers became a problem in the days of John. And these traveling ministers begin to agree with the dividers who are in the church. And by the way, if you are a traveling minister, this is the problem. And we have to think through this. You are a parent, and you're a family, and you're having a problem with one of your children, okay? There's a traveling minister and or a stranger that you begin to talk to and say, I have a problem with my daughter. This is what I have done. And that person will agree with you. He doesn't have any clue what the background is. So he will be counseling you out of 100% ignorance because he doesn't know. But by the way, this becomes the problems in terms of counselings also and therapies. Because you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist and you sit down, how do you feel? How do you feel about your mom? The guy doesn't know the background. Remember that lady in Northbrook, a Korean lady? She was seen forcing her child, I think, to go to the band. And she was screaming at her child and very upset, raising her voice and drag her daughter, go to the van. Well, a bystander who thought he was very smart called the police and said, there's a child abuse going on. The police came right away, took the child from the mother. Because they are experts. They call themselves experts who knows nothing. And so they took the child, sued the mother, and the mother has a day in court. I think even went to jail for one day. And when the neighbors heard it, they were very upset. They said, what is the police doing? Well, because somebody who thought she was very smart saw what's happening and called the police. Called the police. And the child was empowered. The child left. And when the news got hold of them, they started talking to them. It turned out the daughter has been a problem child for so long. Even the community knows it. The mother is very upset. And the mother was overwhelmed by this already. And so she did not really hurt the child. She dragged the child, get in the car. And the police came, and the lady was penalized, has a record, for what? For ignorance on the part of enforcement. Now, this is the problem when you are talking with anybody who doesn't have any clue who you are. Because you can tell your own story. And you can manipulate it. And so these traveling ministers, because they have a need, that becomes even more of a problem, a bigger problem. That's why I've noticed in my travels. Now what happens is the churches begin to try to rectify that. A pastor would come, or a traveling minister would come, and will talk to the pastor and say, what's going on in your church? And so they will tell you what's going on in the church and background and this, courtesy. So now they have an idea what's going on. So when somebody comes, they have an idea. But some ministers abuse it also. You give them knowledge, and so they preach and they give word of knowledge. And then the congregation now thought it was word of knowledge when actually it was an information shared during private conversations. You see, all of these things are beginning to take place, and so the schism, the split begin to grow. And so John took the second position with that background. Not only that, those who are causing division, those who are espousing strange doctrines, never stop communicating with them, because in their culture, it's still true even today, in their culture, hospitality is very strong. You'll be surprised in Israel, in Jerusalem. Actually, the Jews and the Muslims live together. Some are just being radicalized, but they live together. If you are thirsty, it still happens today. You knock on the door, they'll give you water. And if it's lunchtime, they'll ask you to eat. One of my teachers there was surprised because they're both students at the Hebrew University, and the husband got sick. A very smart guy from Missouri. He got sick. They have the money, but it was informed during those days, check, just a check. Well, it so happened it was Saturday. No, it was not Saturday. It was a Friday afternoon. And so the Sabbath is about to begin. At sundown, the Sabbath begins. And the wife was talking to us and said she was in tears because she needs to bring him to a doctor, but they don't have the money. But she has a check. I think during that time it was around $2,000 check. They need to have a doctor. And she said she went to a bank, and it was a Jewish bank, of course. The Sabbath is about to start, and they are closing, and there are documents needed, and so we cannot encash it. And she was in tears. She said she kept walking and went to the Muslim quarters. One Muslim trader saw her and said, "Young lady, you're crying. What is your problem?" And he said, "Oh, I need money. I have money, but the Sabbath is about to begin. I have money, but it is in the form of a check." And the businessman says, "Let me see your check." And look at the check. "Oh, that's $2,000. He said, "Yeah, and I need somebody to change it." And the Muslim doesn't know her, says, "I'll change it." "Yeah, I'll change it." And it shocked her. How did I know? I went to that store. We went to the store, and they're very accommodating. Normally, they live right. It's when they are radicalized, when they're being taught, and they don't know what's going on. And so, now the moment they are radicalized, it begins to corrupt the assembly. It begins to corrupt the congregation. And because some people are very compliant, very tolerant, that's the opposite. Oh, let's love. Then the corruption takes place. What will happen, for example, if a doctor says you have a lump of cancerous cells in your body, and it's in the beginning stage? The doctor will say, "Let's tolerate it. It's part of your body. Let's keep it there." Now he'll say, "Oh, good, it's on the early stage. Let's remove it." While it is early stage, let's remove it. Do you know that Ann's sister, Lenlen, Doctora, I don't know how to call her now because she's separated from the husband. She said that the moment a woman is found with stage 1 cancer, 75% or 78% survivable. The technology, the medical knowledge is improved. If you just go to the doctor, you have a stage 1 breast cancer, it can be dealt with first stage. But the problem is some people say, "Oh, it's just first stage." We have one pastor that from time to time goes to our seminars, and we were told this. She refused to go to the doctor until fluid is already coming out of her body. Keeps tolerating it. You see? That's what happened. That's the other side of toleration. When you become too tolerant, something is already cancerous, something is already deadly, it's going to kill you. And that is why John took the position in verse 10, because he has been dealing with it for a while. Remember, this is 2 John. This is not 1 John. Okay? 1 John, it has been going on for a couple of years. He wrote the letter. They still didn't listen. He wrote the second letter. Then he said, do not even greet them. That is the background. So there is tolerance in John, but the congregation were not listening. The elder, which is John, did not hesitate to deal with these false teachers and their denial that Jesus came in the flesh. John even warned the readers in verse 11, you keep tolerating this. You share in their evil work. I told you this. The former church where we went to, because the family became adulterous. A lot of their leaders became immoral and adulterous. In fact, a lot of their members wants to leave the church. And they told me later when they came there, because they think I'm disciplinarian. They stayed, they say, because pastors say we thought you will impose discipline in the church. Well, we were meeting. We were meeting one day, and the Lord just gave me this vision that the pastor has a mist in his chest, just a very short vision, and he was coughing. We were having a prayer meeting like this. We can see each other, and then he was trying to cough it out, and the mist would not come out. I was thinking, man, you can easily cough it out because there's just a mist right in the chest. I can see the inside of his chest, and it's just a mist. And so he was coughing it out. I said, it will come out. But it never came out. After that, the vision was finished. And so I approached the pastor, and I said, I saw this. I don't know what it means. I said, and he said, oh, thank you for sharing. I know what it means. But it turned out toleration took place so bad that I think almost all of the leaders begin to be corrupted and fell into adultery. Youth leaders the same. Yeah. Why? Because of toleration. You do not know when to say enough is enough. You don't draw demarcation line. John was drawing the demarcation line. Because if you don't, what happened is you share in the evil work. So I warned the pastor. And then something happened again. I was praying about it. And I was saying, Lord, what am I going to do with this? And really, the Lord put it in my heart. You warn a person once, you warn a person twice. There comes a point you become complicit. When the Lord put that in my heart, that's when I realized it's time to go. And not surprisingly, but incidentally, as that happens, the pastor called me in his office and said, we don't need you anymore. We're letting you go. But it becomes easier for me because of what the Lord already told me. He has prepared me. That is where we have to draw the line. What we call as tolerance, actually we become complicit. We become complicit. If somebody comes to you and say, I killed somebody, that's a bad information. Because now the moment you know that, you are supposed to report that. Because if you don't report that, you are an accessory after the fact. Because you have been told. You see, you are now an accessory after the fact. And this is where Christians are very bad at it. And this is where the tolerant community becomes erroneous. And it is happening in the church that John founded or was pastoring before. Depending on the commentary that you're reading, some people went as much as a big number of people leaving the church. And so John warns them, hey, listen, do not share in their evil works. The sharing in their evil works takes place when they begin to accept even the wrong beliefs and help them advertise it. Yeah, help them. Remember, years ago, there were some business here taking place of energized water, and I oppose it. Yeah, I have to oppose it because, of course, that's not true. It's not new. The Shaolin monks have that in India and in China. And so you cannot tolerate certain things. Because you tolerate it, you become participant in it. And And you will know when. You will know. You have to know, because if you don't, it's okay. You know, we have to be very careful when we give it as it's okay, because sometimes say it's okay when it's not okay. You know, I just fought with my husband, and I told my husband I'm going to divorce you. Oh, it's okay. It's okay to express your feeling. Well, you don't know what happened. You're ignorant. You have not talked to the other party. So when you begin to say it's okay, you're looking at one side. Immediately you release a statement out of ignorance. You don't know both sides of the story. And so that toleration began to become a poison. And John was alarmed by that and says, if you're not careful, you're going to be sharing in their evil works. And the Bible says these false teachers have gone out into the world. I told you about that minister in the Philippines, Alianos Christian Center. The pastor, an American missionary, was part of the executive board where I was the president. It's Mrs. Fellowship. And he began to distribute false materials that Jesus is coming back in 1995, September of 1995 in Korea. It was a big uproar because, you know, at that time, the Christianity in Korea is rising up. In fact, at that time, there was a point wherein the spiritual birth rate in Korea is higher than the natural birth rate. Like for every child being born, more than one soul is being born again. So they were saying the Seoul Olympic was used for evangelism. I mean, Billy Graham went there. It's an amazing country back then. But they began to tolerate these things. And so a lot of Christians went to the mountain, sold their property because Jesus is coming back on September of 1995. They sold what they had. They believed these false prophets. Well, what happened in September? He did not return. Now, this friend of mine, he began to sell these books in his church. And Alianos Christian Center was big in those days. Began to sell this. And so we were having a meeting, and I confronted the American missionary. I said, hey, Tom, do you believe this? And he looked at me and said, no, I don't. I said, then why are you selling it? You see, you don't believe it, but you're selling it. And he said, well, you know, I just want people to be aware that Jesus is coming back. But I said, yeah, but that book is dangerous. You know that guy, backslid, is now a bishop of the Episcopalian Church. Left the community of faith. Why? That's what happened. Yeah, when you don't draw the line and begin to say only this far, okay? When you don't draw the line, that's when people will continue to test your limits. And so what happens is you become compliant with them. This goes to show that the contents of 2 John is a very strong follow-up for 1 John. So who is this elder? I mean, can somebody just come in and correct you? For example, you have a family. Can somebody just knock on your door and say, I'm going to put your family straight? They have no idea. Of course, we will not allow that. You know? We can never allow that because they don't know what's happening in their family. A lot of my friends before, they'll visit me. Or when I go to the Philippines, they'll see me how I relate with my kids when they were younger, and how I relate with my wife. And so a lot of them, without invitation, would want to correct me all the time. One of them was even mocking me because I invited him here, and I was calling Joseph during that time. I says, Joseph, and Joseph came and said, yes, sir. You know, Joseph is like, my kids are like that. Yes, sir, he said. Because if I call my kids and they say yes, I'll tell them, yes what? So some people allow that. I don't allow that garbage talk in my house. If I call my James, yes, I'll respond, yes what? Oh, yes sir. Because I want them to continue to be respectful. Yes, sir, or yes, Papa, or yes, Mama. I'm not going to take yes for an answer. Maybe in your house it's allowed, not in my house. You know, so I was calling Joseph, and Joseph said, yes, sir. And my friend said, oh, Brad, that's too much. kulang na lang, sumaludo sa'yo, sabi nga. Yeah. What he was saying is, the only thing that Joseph did not do is to stand straight in attention and salute you, you know. He was mocking me. Well, a couple of years later, his son, and he doesn't even know, I know, his son got older and published in the Facebook a picture of his baby. The guy is not married. And he fathered a child to a woman. He's not married. And the pastor friend of mine hold the baby and is very proud. And one of my friends questioned him, where did you get that grandchild? Your son is not married. Remove the post right away. What happened there? Little by little, the toleration becomes a compromise. Then you become complicit. You see, that is the problem. That is still taking place in the community of faith. We have to learn to draw the line. This is what I believe. This is what I practice. Nobody is going to intrude that. This is where the difference is. So who is it that can correct? Well, the elder. Say the elder. Say it again. The word is where we get the word presbyter, presbyteros. That's where we get the word presbyter. Literally, an elder. Well, if you hear the word elder, literally what it means is what? Old. You don't. It means old. But when it is used in a community of leadership, in an organization, in a church, it takes on a different meaning. An elder now is somebody who, not necessarily aged, but somebody who's accumulated wisdom through years of learning and experience. That there are in politics there are what you call as political elders. You know, these are the wise politicians who through the years have accumulated wisdom and experience, and so they know their way around. They don't run for election anymore. They don't run committees anymore. They are just political elders. They know who's who. They know how to get around. They know how to get things done. These are elders. Okay, so these are political elders. In a community, there are community elders. Well, even in the Philippines, we have elders in our community. The elders in the community are those who knows the community, who knows what it's all about. When you lose these elders, that's when the community loses its identity. Okay? So the eldership then becomes the anchor point. Okay? By the way, that is why families in America lose their identity. What do we do with the elders? Throw them in nursing homes. Yeah, and so now you say, well, my mom is old, my dad is old, it's a bother, so let's throw them. We have a neighbor, they become very good friends with my wife. The wife is now immobile because she's very old. And now the husband, because they stay together, the kids are all successful. Now the husband can no longer take care of the old lady also. Why? Because he's also old. You know, you can only, if you are both old, you can only take care of each other so much. I mean, there comes a point, you look at each other, who's going to take care of us? Now the kids, in the meantime, have their own career. And so what happened? They have no time. We have our own careers now. So we put them in nursing homes. Why? Because they are a bother. What we are forgetting is they are not a bother. They are a depository of wisdom, knowledge, and experience, which will continue to guide you. Now, this neighbor of ours, what the kids did is they stayed in the home, and every day, I don't know how many siblings, how many children? 4 children, 5 children. Every day, one of the children will come to the house. Every day. Every day. Every day. Keep in touch with the parents. And when the mother was old, they talked to my wife and says, Anne, we know you took care of Elizabeth. We really want you to take care of our mom. And Anne says, well, I'm getting old too, you know. And I can no longer do what I was doing before. But but because of the reputation she developed in taking care of Elizabeth, now they want her and says, Anne, we will pay you. How much do you want? And Anne says, well, I'm busy and I'm also getting old. And so my wife says, do you want me to recommend somebody? And the children says, we don't want you to recommend somebody. We have all kinds of recommendations. We want you. You see? Why? Because it turned out the father said, if we can get Anne. And they listen. They listen. Now this is what we are missing. Because we are putting our elders in the nursing homes. We are letting go of years of experience. We are letting go of wisdom. Now sometimes we are stuck in a position. And by the way, sometimes we look at the elder and say, so I wish they're dead. They're a bother. We will do the following things if they're dead. They're just a bother. No, they're not a bother. You need to get their wisdom. You need to get their experience. And maybe you'll do a little bit better with how you are conducting your life. So now, John did not say, Paul will write a letter, Paul and Timothy, or Paul and Silas, to the church in Corinth, blah, blah, blah. Now, the elder says, the elder. He didn't say John. He said, the elder. You know what he was saying? Because the Jews knows what it means. What he was saying, hey, this is me. I'm your elder. I'm your guide. I'm the depository of wisdom, knowledge, and experience. I know how you started. I started the church. I know your temperament. I know you guys. I know your strength. I know your weaknesses. Therefore, I'm writing these things to you. Nobody can talk to you like that except family. Have you noticed your friends are very tolerant about you? Because your friends are ignorant who you are. They have no clue what kind of person you are. Because when you meet together, you eat together. You laugh together. You talk about superficial things. You don't go deep. Therefore, you really don't know each other. Yeah. So when the trouble comes, you wonder, why did my friends walk away? Because they don't know you. And you think they know you know them. Oh, very few friends know each other as well as they should. Most relationships, especially in our days, are superficial. Okay? We don't really go deep. We don't want to open up. We don't want to be vulnerable. John says, I am the elder. And he used an epithet, I'm the elder. Meaning, you only have one spiritual father. Paul said that. You only have one father. You can't have more. I have one father. You can only have one father. You can't have many fathers. You have many teachers, but one father. And so when he said the elder, what he was saying is, not only am I the elder, I am the elder. I'm your spiritual father. I know who you are. So listen to me. So now an elder in the church then is a minister. Now let's translate today. Not because you're old means you're an elder. In the Philippines, we have a saying, walang pinagkatandaan. In English, how do you say it in English? Old but not old. When you get old, you are supposed to grow wiser, presumably. Some people, they get old, they never learn their lesson. I remember I was preaching one time and I was talking about the woman of Samaria. The one that you're living with right now is the fifth. It's not really your husband, the fifth husband. And I said, fifth husband, you never learn your lesson. And an elderly person came to me after the service and said, Pastor Jose, you're right. I never learned my lesson. So I said, I don't know where he's going. And he said, that's why I'm divorcing my wife now, his fifth wife. I said, what? I'm marrying the sixth one. I was thinking to myself, you never really learn a thing, I mean, look, if you start a business, it went bankrupt. You start another business, it went bankrupt. If you start asking a question, am I cut for this? Maybe I'm not a businessman. If every business you open, it goes bankrupt, you're not cut for that. Okay? Don't enter business. You don't have what it takes. Okay, so just be a good employee and begin making money and saving money. But if every time you start a business, it keeps going bankrupt, you think twice. You begin to say, whoa, what's happening? Do I have a knack for it? Maybe you don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know? But he says, I'm the elder. This is what churches need. This is what families need. We need voices of wisdom, voices of reason, voices of authority, voices that when they open their mouth, you listen to them. It is also important that we have that voice in our lives. Because one day, God willing, if we grow in wisdom and experience, we will be that voice. One day. That is if you grow in wisdom. You grow in knowledge. That's why elders, even if they are wrong sometimes, they are respected. Because they have earned their keeps. And people know this person is reliable. That's why Paul is insisting that no neophyte should go into the ministry. No neophyte, meaning no younger ones. It's not referring to age. You don't know anything. When I started announcing that my son, John, the one teaching downstairs, is in Trinity. Trinity has a very good reputation. It's going down right now, but Trinity has a very good reputation globally. The Trinity International University. It's one of the best conservative seminaries in the world before. The reputation is global. So when they heard Trinity, wow, your son is in Trinity. I said, yeah. They were looking forward for me having my son teach the leaders in our seminars. These are pastors and leaders. And they are wondering why I'm not putting John. Well, I told them, because John knows nothing. And they says, what do you mean he's in Bible school? Yeah, he's in Bible school, but what does he know? Well, that's my son. It doesn't mean he doesn't know anything. He knows a lot of things. But he is young. You know, youth is equated with inexperience and ignorance. Ignorance doesn't mean you don't know, not had knowledge. You have no experience in life. Okay, can you imagine two teenagers? I have a boyfriend and he wants to live with me. Counseling with a fellow teenager, both stupid people counseling each other. No, go to an elder. Go to somebody who knows, who had been to life, who has been wounded, who had recovered. And they'll tell you, hey, listen, my mom is strict, my dad is strict. What do I do? You talk to a foolish guy. Get rid of your mom. Leave. But a wise person, hey, listen, you better listen to your mom. You better listen to your dad. They know you know what your mom went through. You know what your dad went through. Yeah, he looks grumpy, but you know what he went through, what he put up with to raise you up. They don't know these things. But you have a wise person to a wise person, the wisdom exponentially grow. You have a stupid person, talk to another stupid person. The stupidity just is what happened, you know. And people are losing that. That's why John took the time and says, I mean, I like really the beginning of the elder. You can say, John's the elder. By the way, during this time, John was not just the elder. He was old. He was old. Fox, Book of Martyrs, he could no longer walk. So they will carry him on the stretcher to preach. So one day, Fox, Book of Martyrs, carry him on the stretcher. You see some old preachers right now, they cannot stand up like I do. You know? So I know I'm not that old. They could no longer tolerate that. They will sit down while preaching. It's not a show. Their knees can't handle it anymore. You know? So they will sit down. John was being carried in a stretcher, and they'll put him in the platform. When he was so old, they carried him on a stretcher, and John mounted the podium and says, brothers, he said, love one another. And then he stopped. And he left. And the people said, whoa, maybe he's tired, you know. So they brought him the following Sunday. And he mounted the pulpit again. And by the way, some of these older ministers, because they are old, they are only called the moment it's time for them to. They cannot withstand the worship service. You know, if you are old and your knees are weak, you know, we worship standing up, right, and clapping our hands. The older you get, your knees can't take it anymore. So you'll find, you'll find in some churches. No, I'm not saying it's you. You know, some people are just lazy. You just really want to sit down. But some of the people who are old, don't criticize them because during the worship they'll just sit down. No, I'm not saying that my wife is old because she thinks she's young. But you will notice that my wife during the service, she will just sit down. But she will whisper to me, I'm tired. What do you mean you're tired? You're late and then you're tired. You know, I'm tired. The knees can't take it anymore. So you'll find in a lot of assemblies, the older people, they just sit down. It's not because they don't want to stand up. They're just old. You know, so the following Sunday, John was brought up again and he mounted the pulpit and then he preached and he said, brothers, love one another. Oh, some deacons who are younger, they begin to be upset. So they talk to him, says, Pastor John, do you have a problem? You know, that's your sermon last Sunday. It's very short. Preachers in those days normally talk for a couple of hours. It's very short. Can you imagine you have 30 minutes worship and then love one another? Dismissal time. John is barely starting downstairs. So the deacon, the younger deacon, talked to him and says, Pastor John, you have a problem? You preached that. Did you forget? That's what your message is. Why don't you preach another sermon this coming Sunday? So they brought him the third Sunday, mount the pulpit, and he leaned forward and says, brothers, love one another. And he stopped. And so the deacon asked him, why do you keep saying that? Oh, but the elder responded. He said, because if you can do this, that is enough. Now, can you imagine that statement? If you can do this, that is enough. Now, that is deep. You see? An elder can say that. An elder can say that. Not a younger. Okay, not a younger. Kenneth E. Hagin, he prepared his sermon, you know, he specialized on faith. When he was old, he was over 60 years old, I think he was going 70, because he wrote a book, title is El Shaddai. I've read that book a couple of times. And he was about to mount the pulpit, he's got his preaching, and the Spirit of the Lord spoke to him and said, Kenneth, stop writing those, stop looking at those outlines. I said, what do you mean? He said, from now on, I am going to pull from your spirit. Whatever I pull from your spirit, from the deposit that has been there since you were young, I will pull from your spirit. What I pull from your spirit, that's what you preach. And he felt very uncomfortable because he has never done that. He always has his outlines, you know. And so he mounted the pulpit, put aside his outline, and this teaching on El Shaddai came out. Now he was around 70 years old. It was a beautiful sermon. Billy Joe Dorothy was having a problem in his church during that time. Played that tape every day because it was such a powerful sermon. It was turned into a book. Now younger ministers begin to copy that. They say, well, the Lord wants to pull from. There's nothing to pull. You're young. Well, God pulled from your spirit, what will come out? Hot dogs and hamburgers. That's what will come out, you know. It takes time for this to develop. That's why, look an older person who has really grown in wisdom, sit down with them, ask them a question, see what comes out. These pieces of wisdom and nuggets of information that you can never learn in school, it will just come out. That is what we are missing. Okay? We are missing that because we don't listen to the elders anymore. We want them in the nursing homes. And then when we can no longer tolerate them, we put them in the hospice. And they have a limit. You can only live this long, okay? After that, the insurance runs out, so I'll kill you. That's what they do now. But that is what's happening. By the way, in Canada, they just went deeper. They just legalized the euthanasia thing again, and the government is going to fund it. And so this is just getting worse, and we better pray that we'll develop conscience here in America and not allow that. So John is asserting, this is my position of authority. An elder, therefore, must be well-known and respected. And that is the same case with us today. We should know those who labor among us, and we should know those with wisdom and those who don't have wisdom. If I want to be a millionaire, I'm not going to talk to somebody who doesn't know what a million is. I'm going to talk to a millionaire and ask him, how do you make millions? Because they know what it takes to make millions. I'm not going to talk to somebody who's just like me, who doesn't make millions. I'm going to talk to a millionaire. The same thing with everything else. You want to know, young people, you want to know how to finish college and how to develop your... Talk to people who have finished college. Yeah. You want to know how to be admitted to a good school and struggle? Talk to somebody who's gone through that. They will teach you something. You want to know how to start a family? Talk to people with families and develop good families. That's how you begin to develop wisdom and grow wisdom yourself. Now you don't look and say, well, I disagree with that, I'm going to come up with my own. That's a foolish position because you don't know. You have to start somewhere. Knowledge must be passed. John the elder addressed them, look at this, he said, the elder, to the elect lady and her children. So John is saying, me elder, you children. You see that? Me elder, you children. Sometimes we talk to old people who are counseling and say, who do you think you are? That's a very proud statement to make. John says, me, elder, you, children. What he was saying is, he didn't say, you young ones. In the first epistle, he said, young men. He included that, but here, you children. Why? Because you have the first John. You have a couple of years to correct your ways, and you did not correct your ways. A person who cannot correct his ways is a child. Listen to that. A person who cannot correct his way is a child. Forget the age. If you have done a mistake and you were told how to do it right, and you still make the same mistake, you are a child makes the same mistake. You are feeding the child, and the Gerber food, baby food, keeps coming out of the mouth, and you wipe it, and it's growing old. A son or daughter, you wipe that food, you be clean, keep doing the same thing. It's a child. They have 2 years to correct themselves. They have years of being a Christian, and you are still tolerating evil from among you. So he said, me elder, you children. Why? You cannot correct yourself. A person who cannot learn, who doesn't learn from their mistakes, is a child, you see. It's a person who never grow in wisdom and never develop. Therefore, that person needs to be given wisdom. He needs to be to hear from people with the pastory of knowledge and understanding, so they can live they can live their lives well. He said, "I'm the elder, you are the child." In Paul's writing, he said, older women, look at this, should train younger women. What Paul was saying is, mothers and grandmothers should train the young wives on how to conduct themselves in the household of faith. You know, like I don't know if my wife had already realized it, but I've told her a few times, Ann, you need to start coaching young mothers in the church. Yeah, and she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "That's exactly what I mean. You need to start coaching young mothers in the church." And so some elderly mothers who have gained wisdom through years, you need to be teaching young mothers. Because if you don't coach the young mothers, then what happens is they are left to themselves. They don't know how to raise a family. And similar with the young husbands, young fathers, they need to be taught by the elders. So now this speaks of intimacy. There is a relationship, there is a disagreement, there is a misunderstanding, but there is an intimate relationship between the elder and the children. And this is what needs to develop between parents and children. Okay? Now some of you are young parents, especially to you young parents. Do not compromise on this one. Young parents, you need to develop intimate relationship with your children. I don't know when Blood and Ira are here. I told you every time you come here, I'm going to ask you that. But for example, when you start having children, do not compromise that. You need to develop intimate relationship with your children. Now, both of you have your parents. You know their mistakes. You know their positives. Learn from that. You know, growing up, I didn't like the way my parents relate with each other. They have a very strong bond. They'll fight all the time, and they will threaten to separate all the time, and they will split the kids. My father will say, "I'll take Lourdes." My mother will say, "I'll take Jose," you know, and they'll split the kids. They'll talk, and I'm listening to all of this garbage, you know. And later on, because I have my family, I asked my mother, "Why do you always say you'll choose me?" You know, like kids are chicken that they will split. I'll eat this, you eat that, you know. I've seen their struggle. I've seen the positive and I've seen the negatives. And so when I begin to start our families, I look at my friends with families and I say, boy, I've got to learn from all of this. Some pastors who have their children and lose their families. I said, I'm not going to have that. That's why when you see me kissing my wife in public, that's deliberate. Yeah, that's deliberate. When you see the closeness that I have with my kids, that's deliberate. That's by design. It's not accidental. It's intentional. Yeah. And so people will criticize me. Who cares? I don't like your family. I like my family. Yeah. I've seen some children disrespect their parents, and then you're going to criticize me. That's a joke. Okay? That is a big joke. Because you cannot handle your kids, and then you're going to teach me how to handle my kids. That's not just a big joke. That's hilarious, okay? You shut your mouth. I've learned that because you need to learn from the mistakes of others. And that's what you and I, we did a lot of mistakes in life, okay? All of us, nobody exempted. We learned from that. And so when we pass on the wisdom, then we improve the next generation. Now, when you don't pass on wisdom, or you don't have wisdom to pass on, then you make the next generation worse than you are. So where in the world did you get that, Pastor? Say, from the Bible. Yeah. Remember Jesus was telling the Pharisees, you find yourself disciples, and you make them worse than you are. Because these Pharisees and Sadducees lost their wisdom, they lost their way, and now they got for themselves disciples. The disciples becomes, listen to me, parents, if you don't disciple your children well, I'll tell you what will happen. You can write down and call me a false prophet after I die, you know, because it will be that much time to take. If you don't discipline your kids well, they will be worse than you are. And then if they don't know how to disciple their kids, that's why society deteriorates. That's how it deteriorates. You have people who refuse to disciple others. That's why this intimate relationship has got to develop. Yeah, you will fight. Yeah, well, I fight with my wife all the time. And sometimes I enjoy it too much, you know. My kid sees that. My wife will be cooking and it'll be annoying her. And my wife will be at the top of her lungs getting angry with me. And my kids will tell me, Papa, stop that. I said, I like it, you know. I just annoy her. And she knows it. So we went through that, but we learned our lessons. My kids, they struggle with us, but they learn their lesson. And I tell them now, we tell Joseph, we tell John, and we says, well, hopefully you can discipline your kids the way we discipline you guys. You ever wonder why my kids are not into boyfriend, girlfriend? They have wisdom. They learn from everybody. We pointed it out. What happened to that boy who's a braggart? What happened to that girl who's a braggart? They have no answer. I said, look, they can't even finish school. You want to follow that? Go ahead. And they have no answer. We do that in our discussion. And so they learn. And so my son, I said, Joseph, I need my grandchild. And I said, Papa, I'm still being deployed. So what do you want me to be deployed and be worried if my girlfriend is running around with another man? That's what he told me. Yeah. He said, I learned from these things, Papa. You taught me this. That's why they're not in a hurry. I mean, people, what's wrong? There's nothing wrong with them. There's something right with them. Okay, some people got it wrong. What's wrong with them? Hey, there's nothing wrong with them. There is something right with them. Something wrong with your kids, not with my kids. Yeah. Something right with them. They have learned from the mistakes of others. And so I told them, no courtship until you finish college. Well, what are you going to do? Look at each other? Let's have a date. What are you going to do? Just look at each other? You're a fool. You're not going to look at each other. You're going to end up sleeping together. Get a job, The moment you can feed yourself and save some money, then maybe you can think about marriage. Now I understand emergencies and all of those things, but we need to pull wisdom like this old man here, John. John was already old during this time. And he's getting this wealth of knowledge and information and saying, hey guys, this is how we should live. And we're forgetting that. That's why in the introduction, boy, I'm telling you, they are removing Christ from Christmas, calling it happy holidays. Any society who takes God out of the public square goes down. Yeah. Any society. That includes America. And for the life of me, a lot of Christians, a lot of you need some repenting. You are very compliant with this. You choose the cards now, happy holidays. What holiday? Somebody greets you, happy birthday, and tell you, happy holiday. We are celebrating the birth of the Messiah, not the birth of some holiday. What if during your birthday I send you a card, happy holiday? You say, well, what's holiday? Yeah. We are tolerant. And some of you have already bought the cards. If it's happy holiday, shame on you. And I'm saying that as your pastor. You gotta learn how to stand your ground. Get something that says Merry Christmas. Erase that happy holiday then. Put Merry Christmas. It's not your birthday, okay? It's 12:35, let's all stand, okay? We'll finish this tonight, okay?